This challenge run will be split into 3 notable segments, each of them getting their own video. The second video will focus on the Hyperdimension arc, which will be a combination of all 4 stories as well as the final stretch with a showdown against Affy Mojas. Well, that certainly didn't pan out well, did it? Anyways, hey everyone! I'm back with more of my V2 challenge run, the BROKEdimension Neptunia challenge. Honestly, I wasn't expecting to have as much fun with this challenge as I am at the moment. Playing V2 in such a different and restricted way really makes you strategize more, and needless to say, starting the game again from scratch after so long of being overpowered feels pretty nice. That being said, if you're watching this video and you're not familiar with the rules of the challenge, or what the challenge is in general, then I recommend you head back to the first video and watch through my explanation of what this challenge is all about. Otherwise, you can just keep watching this video. Except you should still really watch the first video I did. I worked pretty hard on that actually. I promise you'll like it. So, in this video, I'm going to be going through 2 stories of the second arc of the game, which is the Hyperdimension arc. This arc is properly split into 4, technically 5, different sections. There's one section for each of the 4 goddesses: Neptune, Noire, Blonde, and Vert. Of course, we're not just going to be playing as them alone, but we're also going to be joined by some old pals in our party. This is going to be an exciting ride from start to finish, so buckle up and get ready. Starting, of course, with Best Girl Neptune and her story in Planeptune.
私の物語の始まりだよ。やっぱりこのゲームの主役は私じゃなくちゃね。
So, Neptune's story kicks off with us entering the Sakura tree row. Seems pretty familiar, wouldn't you say? Just like the Jingu Sakura Park from the Zero Dimension, there isn't anything particularly interesting about this dungeon. Of course, there's an entirely new cast of enemies for us to fight here, but none of them are really threatening in the slightest, and are just XP food for me. Hell, look at this. 6 red Dogus, yet they can barely damage me at all outside of critical hits. What a joke. So, who's our boss in this dungeon, you might be asking? Did you guess R4? Well, if so, then congrats, because yes, we are in fact fighting R4 for the 5th time so far in this game. But thankfully, I'm not fighting her alone. IF joined my party just before the battle began, meaning a classic pair of characters are going against the world's most recurrent villain. Funnily enough, R4's stats are actually exactly the same as when she fused with Dark Purple, outside of the HP, though that's to be expected since I have less party members. But even though her stats are fairly high, she's nowhere near as much of a challenge as she was when I fought her with Nepgear and Uzume. Yes, I'm still scarred about that, thank you for asking. So, with R4 defeated, not only do we get to go shopping pretty early on in this arc, but we also have Kampa joining our party too. Desu. She met up with Neptune and IF in a cutscene that we skipped, so if you're wondering why we suddenly have Kampa in our arsenal, then that's why. Despite her squishy defenses, get it? Kampa is actually going to be a pretty helpful addition to the team, not only because she's another character I can use to provide support and revive others if I need to, but also because she has 2 aspects about her that give her much use at my point in the game: her massive SP stat, and her healing ability, Kampa's First Aid. Without Nepgear or Uzume in my party, I effectively lost my non-item healing for a short period of time, because neither Neptune nor IF possess any methods of healing without items. But thankfully, Kampa makes up for that by having a healing ability of her own that not only costs a little less than Nepgear or Uzume's heals, but she also has a huge SP stat, allowing me to basically spam this heal whenever I please and mostly not have to worry about running out of SP. So thanks, Kampa! As for my shop visit, it's brief but necessary. The first thing I do is buy the new weapon for Neptune that I have been sorely missing. I mentioned in the last video that I forgot to pick up the free weapon in the Club Zeka dungeon for her, so I'm correcting this mistake here and now. And it's probably the most helpful weapon for her so far, simply because of the combo route that comes with it. As much as I'd love to use the Tachi because of its higher stats, the combo route on it kinda sucks since it's rush oriented. So I decided to go with a lower stats, but better combo route. Our next destination is Haneda City, or if you want to be more specific, the dungeon's name is actually Haneda City Station, but I always called it Haneda City because, well, what the fuck's the difference? Regardless, as soon as we step foot into Haneda City, we're faced with a forced encounter against a few horsebirds and red dogus. I really don't think I need to go into any more depth. They're fodder enemies in a fodder encounter with fodder stats. Fodder. Afterwards, I make my way through Haneda City, grabbing a couple of items along the way before coming across our next event, which is just another encounter with some more fodders. I mean, I get that the whole point is that Haneda City is being overrun with monsters at this point in the story, but at least give them some extra stats or something so they can pose a bit of a threat. With that taken care of, I skip through a couple of cutscenes before I eventually have to head back to Haneda City because, yet again, it's been overrun with monsters. And once again, we're faced with a forced encounter as soon as we enter the dungeon. However, this time, instead of just fodder enemies, we have to go up against a fodder boss as well, in the form of Warechu. Unfortunately for him, his stats are the exact same as R4's, minus the fact that he has significantly lower HP, as well as a weakness to the light element, something 2 of the 3 characters that I'm using have in their SP attacks. So all we need to do is a few La Delphinuses and combo love hearts, and the rat has been exterminated. Okay, well, we didn't kill him, but you get my point, we beat his ass. After finding out that Neptune's precious console has been taken away, we set our sights for the Planepark as our next dungeon. Oh boy, it sure looks familiar. I wonder why that is the case. Ha ha ha. The Planepark, pretty creative name by the way, has nothing particularly special to offer, a bit of a contrast to the Smashbox Stadium where it at least offered us a free weapon to use for one of our party members. Here, we've got none of that, although the enemies that we can grind here aren't too bad to face and offer a decent amount of XP and credits. Moving on to the boss of this dungeon, we have Steamax, the shady robot ninja who serves Afimojas. His stats are fairly high, needless to say. With solid attack and defense stats across the board, our mechanical menace here is quite the formidable foe, especially since IF and Compa both have pretty squishy physical defenses. However, he's not only bringing stats to the table, he's got a whole new mechanic up his sleeve. A status effect entirely new to V2, and the Neptunia series in general, Shadowbind. Or Shadow Hold? Shadowbind sounds cooler, so I'm calling it that. Shadowbind is a status effect that surrounds the inflicted target with a ring of shadowy smoke, preventing that character from being able to move. But they can still use their attacks, use items, launch EXE drives, what have you. And generally speaking, it'll last up to 3 or so turns. For this fight in particular, this is an extremely annoying status to get hit by, as the move that Steamax uses to inflict it is one that he uses from a pretty far distance that also knocks us back, meaning that most attacks aren't going to be able to hit him unless they're absolutely fucking enormous. But sadly, none of my available attacks are that. This doesn't stop us from taking him down with ease though. Something I also want to mention before we move on, I deliberately kept myself at the level cap, level 29 in this case, but I grinded just enough XP to where Neptune would level up after this one fight, letting her reach level 30 once we beat Steamax. This is super important, as this allows me to gain our first EXE drive of the run, Neptune Break. Neptune Break is our strongest move at this point, and since it costs EXE instead of SP, it's not as limited a resource. This is going to be extremely helpful, as you'll soon see. But before that, it's shopping time! Since Steamax is a notable antagonist, I'm allowed to go shopping one more time before moving on to the last bits of Neptune's story. First, I buy the claw weapon for IF for no reason other than to simply boost IF's damage output for the upcoming fights. And second, I buy the golf, symbol encounter, and Bernard Moe idea chips to turn into a game disc that I put on Neptune. All of the effects of these chips are listed on screen right now. So, with Steamax defeated and our shopping finished, we return to Planeptune and see the chaotic state that it's become because of some things mentioned in the cutscene that I skipped. Regardless of that though, we're first faced with the toughest boss of this entire story, B-Sha, the gold third of Planeptune. This golden Pac-Man-eyed child is the reason why I grinded to level 30 and get Neptune Break. While her stats appear similar to Steamax's, looks can be deceiving, and our gilded-haired lass is a master of deception in that regard. You see, a very important distinction to be made between Steamax and B-Sha is that B-Sha actually uses combo attacks. Yeah, They're not just one single attack, she actually uses her combo attacks that you use when you can play as her in the game. So even though her strength stat is very similar to Steamax's, in reality, she's hitting significantly harder than Steamax's attempts of finding a girlfriend, and she's able to easily wipe out my team in just a few turns if I'm not careful enough. This isn't even mentioning that she has her SP attacks and EXE drive that she can use whenever she wants, and doesn't need to go past the health threshold in order to activate them. All of these factors combined, and you've not only got the hardest fight in Neptune's story, but one of the most difficult fights in the game on your hands. At least in my opinion. This is also the reason why I gave Neptune the symbol encounter idea chip. B-Sha's attacks are, for the most part, entirely fire elements, which means that Neptune is going to be taking less overall damage from B-Sha's attacks. This is extremely important, because Neptune is our main damage dealer, and if she goes down, it's almost guaranteed to be a loss. And, well, needless to say, I was an absolute moron going into this fight. Instead of just opening with my SP attacks, I, for some reason, used my combo attacks. This led to both IF and Compa getting absolutely blasted by B-Sha's attacks. I wasn't kidding when I said she hits much harder than Steamax, you know. Both of them went down, even after healing each other, which only left Neptune alive as I futilely tried to revive my teammates, whom only get defeated once again, before accepting my fate and giving up on my first attempt. Yikes, that was a horrible misplay by me. My second attempt definitely started way better though. I spread out my characters so only one of them gets hit by B-Sha's attacks at a time, and buffed both Neptune and IF so they can deal more damage and take less damage respectively. From there, I start using my SP attacks on B-Sha, but she manages to kill IF, leaving me down a meat shield. Compa soon joins her girlfriend at the Pearly Gates after she gets utterly blasted by B-Sha's EXE drive, once again leaving only Neptune alive. Just look at Neptune's face here. Do you think that's the face of a woman who's pleased with the fact that her two lifelong friends are unconscious? At this point, I'm quite literally just trying to stall so Neptune can get some damage off with her EXE drive, but Compa goes down once again after being hit by 2 rounds of combo moves. But as luck would have it, after I raise IF from the dead, B-Sha starts targeting Neptune instead, which is actually a good thing at this point, since B-Sha is starting to get low on health, meaning I can start letting Neptune take some damage. With SP attacks coming from both IF and Neptune, it was a close call, but I defeated B-Sha on my second attempt. Whew! Good thing I didn't make dumb decisions this go around. But we're not done yet, we still have one final fight to get through, and it's against the Warechu King. Its stats are the highest stats in Neptune's story, albeit with less health than B-Sha, strangely enough. But regardless, it's not going to be that easy. It was super easy. In fact, it was completely effortless. Yeah, the Warechu King is such a pathetic boss fight that you gotta wonder why they even put this guy right after the big hurdle that was B-Sha not even a few minutes ago. Either way, with slight disappointment in my heart, I defeated the Warechu King, and with that, Neptune's story came to an end. It's unfortunate that we're temporarily parting from Best Girl yet again, but we'll come back to her soon. Don't you worry your pretty little heads. Let's move on to the next story, shall we?
私の物語を選ぶのね。なら、この私の活躍をしっかり見届けなさいよね。
Noire's story begins with us heading face first into the Westward Ravine. Contrary to our monster-slaying habit at the beginning of Neptune's story, the Westward Ravine actually encourages us to avoid fighting the monsters, as if it were a stealth section. It's a bit unusual in a game like this, refusing to fight the monsters and get stronger as a result, but with such few healing items to my name, and with only a single party member who's running their default gear and unable to be revived, it's evident that conserving my HP and SP is better than trying to engage in a fight that will just wear me down. This especially goes for the Flame Fenrir's, which have very high stats, both offensively and defensively, and I am assuredly screwed if I fight one. So, for now, I just trudge along and collect all of the items I can before coming across our first boss fight as Noire, the Hellish Turtle. Funnily enough, it too has the same stats as Dark Purple infused R4, minus the health, which is also the case for a couple of other bosses that I'll get into later. But for now, this guy is incredibly easy. Just 2 lazy dances is enough to beat it into the ground and exit the dungeon. Afterwards, I skip a lot of cutscenes, and find myself back in the Westward Ravine to fight yet another boss. Once again, I avoid fighting the enemies here so I can conserve my HP and SP until I reach the boss, which is the Dark Unicorn. This is one of the other bosses that I mentioned that had the same stats as Dark Purple Infused R4 besides the health. Though this time, we're facing a boss with a bit more than triple the health as the Hellish Turtle. Definitely going to be a bit of a longer fight than the last one. However, the method to deal with it remains exactly the same. Just use my SP attacks and then finish it off with combo attacks when I run out of SP for Lacy Dance. Nothing outstanding whatsoever, so let's just move on. Skipping a few more cutscenes, I actually get a new party member on my side in the form of Uni, Noire's younger sister. As a party member, Uni isn't the most powerful character around, far from it actually, but she does provide some pretty nice attributes. For one, she's able to attack enemies from a pretty large distance, not only being able to keep herself away from the danger, but also being able to snipe enemies that are low on health that another party member might not have been able to kill. And secondly, she has two pretty impactful SP attacks in the form of Venom Shot and Paralysis Shot. As their names suggest, they are able to inflict both the poison and paralysis status respectively, both of which are pretty helpful in being able to chip away and immobilize powerful enemies. Her biggest issue, however, is that she is frail as paper. She cannot take attacks very well, both physically and elementally, meaning she's toast if she's focused by enemies or bosses. So, if you have a good eye, you might notice that there isn't a red exclamation point anywhere on the map at the moment, which usually details that there's an event we need to view. Well, that's because we have to do a mandatory quest from the guild to progress the story. The quest is called Can't Forgive Jellies, and that sounds racist, where we need to defeat 10 exhausted jellies to complete it. These guys are located in, you guessed it, the Westward Ravine, which means we're heading back there for the third time in a row! Yippee! I don't really have anything witty to say about the quest, honestly. I literally just killed 10 of these fodder enemies and it was super basic. Moving on. I reported the quest as completed, which I was forced to do, so don't get mad at me please, and got access to a new dungeon for me to go through, the Daze Station Dungeon. This dungeon has the very special benefit of being super uneventful, and is also a repeated type of dungeon from the previous arc. Isn't that just fantastic? Honestly speaking, there really isn't anything for me to say about this dungeon that I haven't already said so often about a lot of the other dungeons in this game. There's nothing special about it. However, one very important item that I managed to pick up here in this dungeon is the media card blank disc. With every idea chip slot open for use, this blank disc is going to come in handy at some point later down the line. For the time being, I breeze through the dungeon and make it all the way to the end where the boss awaits us, the Demonic Law. Edgy name and design aside, this guy is your run-of-the-mill, big enemy hit hard boss that doesn't do much more than serve as an obstacle in our path towards the end goal. All I need to do in this fight is spam my SP attacks, use Light Schwarz, Noire and Uni's formation attack, and win. After this fight, Uni leaves our party, leaving us with just Noire as we move on to the next boss. First though, I make a game disc with the Adventure RPG and Moe Burn-In idea chips that I acquired from the Westward Ravine and Daze Station respectively. And of course, I had to give it a wonderful name. Now, moving on to the boss that we're about to go up against, this guy, the Golvellia, or however the hell you pronounce it. Hilariously enough, this thing has the exact same stats as the Demonic Law that we just fought with 2 party members. And it even has more health to boot, despite the fact that I only have 1 party member at the moment. Who the fuck balanced these 2 bosses? The strategy here is basically the same, albeit I do have to recover my SP using a few SP chargers so that I can keep laying on the damage while also using healing grasses to keep myself alive. Other than that though, this guy isn't anything to write home about. Just another lizard slain. Afterwards, I return to Lastation, and the last new dungeon of this story is opened up to us, the Lastation Golden Summit. If you're playing this story before the other 2 stories of this arc, then this dungeon is going to be your first introduction to a new type of dungeon in this game, the Golden Summit. The whole gimmick is that, on the outside, it looks fairly normal and large aside from its gilded material, but on the inside, it's as though it's an entirely different space with a starry background and these weird stained glass-like tiles that are scattered everywhere, even in the background. Honestly, this is probably one of my favorite designs for any dungeon in the series. I love the way it looks, I love the music here, and I think that it's a great addition to this game. I sure hope that this dungeon doesn't get reused over and over again several different times over the course of the game. Anywho, this dungeon is fairly straightforward. I even collected a new weapon for Noire in the first room, Code White. It's probably the best weapon that I can use at the moment, which allows me the most effective combo route currently available to me, letting me do more damage and whatnot. And I'm definitely going to need it for the upcoming fight against K-Sha. Speaking of that, why don't we start talking about it right now, yeah? So, K-Sha. K-Sha. The nightmares you've caused some people, myself included, can't be overstated, honestly. K-Sha's first fight can be an absolute coin flip on whether or not you win, especially when you don't have Noire's EXE drive, Infinite Slash. With stats that rival B-Sha's, as well as the fact that you can only fight K-Sha with Noire, means that you're in for a rough time if she doesn't play nice and uses her EXE drive. You're basically banking on her only using her weaker SP attacks and a few combo attacks in order to get by. Combine that with the fact that I'm quite literally level locked out of getting Noire's EXE drive, which would really help make this fight a lot easier, and my chances of winning looked kind of bleak. So I went into the fight ready to face a few game overs and... Wait, huh? I beat it on the first try? Holy shit, I was genuinely not expecting to win first try. That is astonishingly good luck, really. But hey, I'm never gonna complain about winning this fight first try. Well, with K-Sha defeated, since she is a notable antagonist, yes, she is an antagonist in the context of this story, in case you're wondering, I'm able to do some more shopping. But really, I only buy one thing, but from my point of view, it was really the only thing I felt was worth an investment, which is the ICE Processor Unit Core. Not only will this provide me with a bit more to my overall stats in the HDD form, but it also gives me a resistance to the ice element attacks. Granted, it does reduce my resistance to fire element attacks a bit, but Noire already has a great resistance to those, so it's not like I'm losing much. For the final stretch of Noire's story, we're tasked with heading back into the Lastation Golden Summit to deal with the Order Woman and a robot wreaking havoc, trying to nullify K-Sha's power, which was all explained in a pair of cutscenes that I, of course, skipped. Here, we're faced with two encounters back to back, the first of which being against this M-Gear robot. Real clever, Compile Heart. Real clever. Despite this thing having the same stats as K-Sha's first fight, with higher physical attack and HP to boot, it's a pretty easy boss to take care of. Thanks to Noire having access to her EXE drive, Infinite Slash, my objective is to just spam my SP attacks, and blast it with Infinite Slashes whenever I can until it's done and dusted. Overall, a fairly simple boss fight. But after that, we have to face K-Sha yet again as she becomes corrupted in Yandere once more. This time, I'm thankfully not alone, though, and I have Uni on my side to help me with this absolute menace. As she has the highest stats of any enemy in this story, K-Sha's one tough cookie to crack, sporting almost 3 times more HP than her first battle with higher overall stats as well. However, thanks to Noire having Infinite Slash, like I said before, this fight isn't going to be as bad as I expected the first fight to be. As long as I keep both Noire and Uni alive at the same time, that way K-Sha's AI can choose to target either one instead of hard focusing, I'll have a swift victory on my hands. And, well, needless to say, I got just that. K-Sha is defeated once and for all, and with that, we arrive at the end of Noire's story. We're halfway through the stories at this point, but unfortunately for all of you, you're gonna have to wait until the next part to see what I'm getting myself into with Blonde's story, Vert's story, and the finale against Afimojas. After all, I can't let this video get too long. But with that said, I appreciate those of you who stuck around until this point, and I hope that what was shown to you so far has been entertaining and worthy of your time. So for now, I'll see you all in the next upload. Peace!